Coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on Auraria campus, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for listening to All Sports through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com, live every Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with Major League Baseball, Mariano Rivera, Edgar Martinez, Roy Halladay, and Mike Mussina were inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame last month, and these four individuals were the class of 2019. So I want to say congrats to Mariano Rivera, Edgar Martinez, Roy Halladay, and Mike Mussina for having a great career with their teams in Major League Baseball, and they all definitely deserve to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Major League Baseball, the fans, personnel, individual players and teams definitely miss these four individuals from playing Major League Baseball, especially Roy Halladay after he passed away from a plane crash in the last year. But congrats to these four individuals on having a great career in Major League Baseball. Clayton Kershaw tied Sandy Koufax for fifth on the Dodgers all-time wins list with 165 wins. So with one more win, Clayton Kershaw will move into fourth on the Dodgers all-time wins list among pitchers in Dodgers franchise history. Chris Sale is the fastest pitcher to record 2,000 strikeouts in Major League Baseball history. Albert Pujols broke the hits record for foreign-born players, but he's also the leader in home runs, and RBIs. There's no doubt that Clayton Kershaw and Chris Sale are two of the best pitchers to ever pitch in Major League Baseball. And when they decide to call it a career and hang up their jerseys, you never know. With all the records they hold and all the records they have broke throughout their career, we may see Clayton Kershaw and Chris Sale in Cooperstown going into the future. So we're going to have to wait and see if Clayton Kershaw and Chris Sale make it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Also, Albert Pujols, he's one of the best hitters we have ever seen in Major League Baseball. So when Albert Pujols decides to call it a career and hang up his jersey, it's very likely we're going to see Albert Pujols in Cooperstown going into the future. On Monday, August 12th, the 2020 Major League Baseball schedules were released for all 30 teams. Even though there's still a month and a half left in the 2019 regular season, and the postseason doesn't begin till October, Major League Baseball already released the 2020 schedules for all 30 teams. So make sure to check out your favorite team's schedule and look at all the team's schedules and start making plans for next summer and for the 2020 season. Even though we're still in the 2019 season, these are the series and the games that you want to watch out for in 2020. So here's what's to watch for in the 2020 season. The Mets versus the Marlins in the Puerto Rico series from April 28th through April 30th. The Cubs versus the Cardinals in the London series from June 13th through June 14th. The All-Star Game at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California on July 14th. The Yankees versus the White Sox in the Field of Dreams in Iowa on August 13th. And the Red Sox versus the Orioles in the Little League Classic in Williamsport, Pennsylvania on August 23rd. So those are the games in the series that you want to watch out for in the 2020 season. So make sure to enjoy the rest of the 2019 season, but we're also going to look forward to the 2020 season. The Major League Baseball Players Weekend is next weekend from August 23rd through August 25th. So right now I'm going to update you with the current Rockies schedule from this past week, and I'm also going to tell you who the Rockies go against in the next week. To start off, last weekend, the Rockies continued their road trip down to San Diego, and they had a 4-game series against their divisional rival, the Padres, down in San Diego. In the first game, the Rockies lost the game 3-9. In the second game, the Rockies lost the game 1-7. In the third game, the Rockies lost the game 5-8. And in the final game of this series, the Rockies were able to win this game 8-3. So overall, the Rockies were only able to take one game from the Padres. Then this past week, the Rockies returned back to Coors Field to start off their homestand against their divisional rival, the Diamondbacks, here at Coors Field. Their 6-game homestand started off with the Diamondbacks during the week, and the homestand will continue into this weekend against the Marlins here at Coors Field. In the Diamondbacks series, in the first game, the Rockies lost a close game 6-8. In the second game, the Rockies lost the game 3-9. And in the final game of this series, the Rockies were able to win in walk-off style and win a close game in the bottom of the 9th inning by a Nolan Arenado 2-home-run walk-off win against the Diamondbacks 7-6. So going into the bottom of the 9th inning, the Rockies were losing 5-6, but the Rockies were able to get Trevor Story on base after the Diamondbacks walked him. And with Trevor Story on first base, Nolan Arenado came up to bat, and he hit that 2-run home run walk-off win to beat the Diamondbacks in the final game of this series. So overall, the Rockies were able to win the final game of this series and take one game from the Diamondbacks. This weekend, the Rockies go against the Marlins here at Coors Field. Next week, the Rockies start their 7-game road trip, and they start the road trip by heading down to Arizona to go against their divisional rival, the Diamondbacks, down in Arizona. And then the following weekend, the Rockies will have a 4-game series as they continue their road trip up to St. Louis. So those are the final scores and teams the Rockies went up against this past week. And those are the teams that the Rockies go up against next week. As of this week, the Yankees and the Dodgers are the first 2 teams to win 80 games this season. So looking at the top 10 teams in Major League Baseball right now, the Yankees and the Dodgers are definitely in the top 5 right now, and even in the top 3. And there's no doubt that the Yankees and the Dodgers are going to get into the postseason, and we're going to have to wait and see. But there's a very good chance the Yankees and the Dodgers will go up against each other in the World Series if both these teams make it that far throughout the postseason and they come out of their league. So we're going to have to wait and see what 2 teams play in this year's World Series. But it's very likely it can be the Yankees from the American League and the Dodgers from the National League. So right now I'm going to update you with the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. To start off in the American League East, right now the Yankees are leading this division at 81 games, and the next closest team is the Rays by 10 games, and they're sitting at 71 games. In the American League Central, right now the Twins are leading this division at 72 games, but the Indians, they're sitting at 72 games, and they're only half a game back. So this American League Central race is definitely a tight division race. In the American League West, right now the Astros are leading this division at 78 games, and the next closest team is the Athletics by 9.5 games, and they're sitting at 68 games. In the National League East, right now the Braves are leading this division at 72 games. And the next closest team is the Nationals by 6 games, and they're sitting at 65 games. In the National League Central, right now the Cardinals and the Cubs are tied for this division at 63 games. And the next closest team is the Brewers by 1.5 games, and they're also sitting at 63 games. This season, the National League Central has definitely been a tight race in this division, and it may come down to the final series in the regular season. So we're going to have to wait and see what team wins the National League Central and what team's going to be the division champion. Between the Cardinals, Cubs, and Brewers, we're going to have to wait and see what team wins the National League Central. But the other two teams that don't win this division, there's no doubt they'll be fighting for the 2 wildcard spots in the National League. And looking at the wildcard standings, whatever 2 teams between the Cardinals, Cubs, and Brewers that don't win the National League Central, these other 2 teams can definitely be the 2 wildcard teams in the National League. And in the National League West, right now the Dodgers are leading this division at 81 games, and the next closest team is the Diamondbacks by 19 games, and they're sitting at 61 games. And looking at the National League West, the Dodgers are going to run away with this division and be division champions once again, since no other team in this division is going to catch up to the Dodgers. So that's the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. And with a month and a half remaining in the regular season, the postseason's just around the corner. So we're going to have to wait and see what teams win their division in both the American and National League, and what 2 teams are the wildcard teams in the American and National League. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what teams make it into the postseason. In the Major League Baseball Power Rankings, the current top 10 Major League Baseball teams are the Astros, Dodgers, Yankees, Cubs, Braves, Twins, Indians, Rays, Mets, and Nationals. There's no doubt these top 10 Major League Baseball teams right now that I just listed, we can see most of them or all of them in the postseason. But there's no doubt that the top 5 teams in Major League Baseball right now, they're all going to make it into the playoffs. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for the Astros, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Braves, the Twins, the Indians. So those are the teams you want to keep an eye out for going into this weekend and into next week. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NFL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NFL football. The Ravens traded kicker Karen Vidic to the Vikings in exchange for a 2020 fifth-round pick. The Patriots acquired tight end Eric Schubert from the Falcons in exchange for a 7th-round pick. Giants wide receiver Corey Coleman suffered a torn ACL, and he will be out for the 2019 season. Giants wide receiver Golden Tate is facing a 4-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substance policy. So far for the Giants, especially at the wide receiver position, going into training camp and during training camp, it hasn't looked that great for the Giants at the wide receiver position. And with the Giants being without Corey Coleman for the entire 2019 season, that's a huge loss among the wide receivers for the Giants. The Giants also have to wait and see what's going to happen with wide receiver Golden Tate's situation of him facing that 4-game suspension. So with the Giants not having Odell Beckham on their team at the wide receiver position, we're going to have to wait and see how the Giants play on offense this season, especially at the wide receiver position, since they don't have Odell Beckham anymore since he got traded to the Browns. They're not going to have Corey Coleman for the entire season. Also, we're going to have to wait and see, is Golden Tate going to have a 4-game suspension? Is he going to appeal it? Is he not going to have that 4-game suspension? So far for the Giants at the wide receiver position during training camp, it hasn't looked that great. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens on offense for the Giants, especially at the wide receiver position during the preseason and going into the regular season. But for Eli Manning, it doesn't look like he's going to have a lot of great weapons at the wide receiver position this season. The NFL suspended Browns wide receiver Antonio Callaway 4 games for violating policy and program on substances of abuse. Broncos rookie tight end Austin Fort suffered a torn ACL during the Seahawks game, and he will be out for the 2019 season. So far, during training camp and in the first week of preseason football, for all 32 teams across the NFL, it has not been great at the tight end position. There has been a lot of tight ends so far that have suffered a torn ACL, which is a season-ending injury. So hopefully, going into the second week of preseason football, for the rest of the preseason and going into the regular season, we don't see more individual players that suffer a torn ACL since it's a season-ending injury, but especially at the tight end and wide receiver position. The Broncos lost to the Seahawks 14-22 in their first preseason game on Thursday, August 8th, up in Seattle. This is the second week of preseason football. The Broncos' second preseason game is against the 49ers here in Denver at Mile High Stadium on Monday, August 19th. This game will be a nationally televised game on ESPN. It will be a Monday Night Football game, so make sure to watch the Broncos versus the 49ers here in Denver at Mile High Stadium. As we're getting to the end of August, watch out for all 32 teams, because at the end of August, that's when all 32 teams have to make their final decisions on who's going to be on their 53-man roster. So we're going to have to wait and see what 53 individual players will make it onto the Broncos roster and on all other 31 teams across the NFL. But going into the second week of preseason football, here's what's to watch for. How the starters play, how the backup players play, and also the players that are trying to make a spot on the roster, how are they going to perform with the pressure since they want to get on a roster? So that's what's to watch for in the second week of preseason football. But for the Broncos, in this second preseason game, we want to watch out for how the Broncos play on offense. We know what they can do on defense, but we need to see what they can do on offense, especially at the quarterback position and at the wide receiver position. I want to see how Joe Flacco plays. I want to see more of Joe Flacco. I want to see how the wide receivers play. The Broncos also announced that they're expecting Emmanuel Sanders to play in the preseason, but he should definitely be ready by the time the regular season begins. So we're going to have to wait and see when Emmanuel Sanders plays. Is it going to be the second preseason game or the third preseason game? We're going to have to wait and see, but I'm definitely looking forward to when Emmanuel Sanders plays. I want to see Joe Flacco. I want to see how the offense plays. I definitely want to see if the offensive line improve and if Joe Flacco is an upgrade from Case Keenum. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NBA. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NBA basketball. Michael Beasley and the Pistons have agreed to a one-year contract. Udonis Haslem is returning to the Heat for a franchise record of 17 seasons. DeMarcus Cousins tore his ACL in his left leg this past week, and he may miss the entire season. So we're going to have to wait and see if DeMarcus Cousins misses this season. This is a huge loss for the Lakers, especially after DeMarcus Cousins became a free agent this past offseason after playing last season with the Warriors and getting signed to a one-year contract with the Lakers. This is definitely going to be a huge loss to the Lakers, as the Lakers are looking forward to trying to make it into the playoffs this season and possibly reach the NBA Finals and win the NBA Finals. The Lakers are definitely looking forward to trying to make it into the playoffs this season, since they have a better team than what they had last season. And the Lakers believe that they have a better team and roster this season. So the Lakers are hoping they can make it back into the playoffs, reach the NBA Finals, and win the NBA Finals this season. So we're going to have to wait and see what type of season the Lakers have. On Monday, August 12th, the 2019-2020 NBA schedules were released for all the teams. Going into this season, here's what's to watch for this season. All the primetime games that will be nationally televised, the 5 Christmas games, the homecoming games, which includes Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, and D'Angelo Russell's return. So here are the teams that you want to keep an eye on this season. The Clippers, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Bucks, the Rockets, the Warriors, the Jazz, the 76ers, the Nets, the Trailblazers, the Mavericks, and the Pelicans. For the Clippers, after adding Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, can they make it into the playoffs, reach the NBA Finals, and win the NBA Finals? We're going to have to wait and see. The Lakers, after adding Anthony Davis and improving their bench, since they have LeBron James on the team, can they finally make it into the playoffs this season? Go far in the playoffs, reach the NBA Finals, and win the NBA Finals? We're going to have to wait and see. The Nuggets, after having a great season this past year, can they bounce back, have another great season, or even play better than last season, reach the playoffs, and advance further? We're going to have to wait and see. But the Nuggets is definitely a team you want to keep an eye out for, especially with that young, talented roster. The Bucks, can they bounce back and make it back into the playoffs this season? We're going to have to wait and see. The Rockets, after trading for Russell Westbrook and sending Chris Paul to the Thunder, and with James Harden on the team, can the Rockets make it into the playoffs and advance further into the playoffs? We're going to have to wait and see. The Warriors, after losing Kevin Durant in free agency, and after losing Klay Thompson in the NBA Finals with a leg injury, with the Warriors adding D'Angelo Russell, still having Steph Curry and Draymond Green on the roster, with the Warriors appearing in the NBA Finals last season and losing to the Raptors in the NBA Finals, can the Warriors make it back into the playoffs this season and reach the NBA Finals without Kevin Durant and maybe without Klay Thompson for most of the season or the entire season? We're going to have to wait and see. The Jazz, will they bounce back and have a great season with Donovan Mitchell and their young, talented roster after adding Mike Conley to the roster? We're going to have to wait and see. But the Jazz is a young, talented team. The 76ers, after losing Jimmy Butler in free agency, but re-signing Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, and still having Joel Embiid on the team, can they bounce back and have a great season and advance further into the playoffs? We're going to have to wait and see. The Nets, after adding Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan, can they reach the playoffs this season and advance far in the playoffs? Even without Kevin Durant, we're going to have to wait and see. After Kevin Durant suffered a leg injury during the NBA Finals last season, it's very likely Kevin Durant will miss most of the season or the entire season this season with the Nets. So we're going to have to wait and see if the Nets can make it into the playoffs and advance far in the playoffs with or without Kevin Durant. But the Nets definitely have a lot of potential going into the future. The Trailblazers, can they bounce back and have a great season this year and advance further in the playoffs with their talented roster? We're going to have to wait and see. The Mavericks, after trading for Kristaps Porzingis at the trade deadline this past season and having Luka Doncic be one of the best rookies in the NBA, can the Mavericks bounce back this season and make it into the playoffs? We're going to have to wait and see. But the Mavericks are definitely looking forward to turning the page and having a new brand of basketball after Dirk Nowitzki retired this past offseason. And the Pelicans, with their young talented roster, which includes rookie Zion Williamson, who was the number 1 pick in this year's NBA draft, with the young talented roster that includes Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram. We're going to have to wait and see how the Pelicans play this season and if they make it into the playoffs after trading Anthony Davis this past offseason. But it wasn't a bad deal for the Pelicans, since the Pelicans traded Anthony Davis to the Lakers for all the young talented players that were on the Lakers last season. So that's what's to watch for this season in the NBA. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the end of the show. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to end the show. What to watch for this week in sports? The Broncos' second preseason game is against the 49ers here in Denver at Mile High Stadium on Monday, August 19th. The second week of NFL preseason football, NFL training camp for all 32 teams, Major League Baseball. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. I hope you all have a great weekend. Tune into the next All Sports with Gerardo show next Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports through Met Radio here on mymetmedia.com. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.